when you're looking at a multifamily value add, you're looking at the existing rents, where are they at, as compared to where they should be with market rent. So you're determining your loss to lease. Now, depending, like for example, in California, we have very strict rent control laws. So if you're in a state with those types of things, that's the other thing you have to look at for value add propositions on multifamily, as opposed to like just buying a fixer up or flip house, which is if I buy this multifamily with the existing tenants, are there going to be rental control laws that are going to impede me from being able to increase their rent so that I could then increase the value and make that profit above and beyond what I bought it for and what it cost me to fix it up.
What if I told you the biggest gains in multifamily aren't found in luxury buildings, but in the properties everyone else overlooks? Today's guest has mastered turning underperforming assets into cash flow machines, and he's about to break down the blueprint. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Roundtable, where we bring you the investors, the innovators, and the market leaders shaping the future of real estate. I'm your host, Lancelot Lenard, top producer and leader of the Sir Lancelot Group, guiding buyers, sellers, and investors across Central East Florida. Today's guest is a powerhouse. Brian Baniqued is founder and CEO of BCRE, a Southern California real estate investment firm known for turning underperforming multifamily assets into high-performing value-add success stories. He specializes in finding hidden opportunities, boosting NOI through operational efficiency, and repositioning properties that most investors write off. And today, he's pulling back the curtain, not just on multifamily, but on discipline, performance, mindset, and even why quantum entanglement fascinates him. Strap in, this episode is going to move. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Lance, that's a lot, if I got that. Thanks for having me on the show, and you got me in one of these impromptu moments. I wasn't sure if this was the right time frame, so you caught me working out in the gym. I'm now here in my home office. But thank you for that warm and welcoming introduction. So for your audience, I'm Brian Baniqued. I'm actually out of Northern California, right outside of San Francisco. And I've been in the business since 1991. Ironically, I actually started the business, got my real estate license in my senior year of high school before I graduated and started closing house transactions in 1991, and then used that to pay for my way through college, which, believe it or not, was to earn a biology degree. At some point, I actually did work in a lab for about 6 months, but never gave up selling real estate, because since I'd been selling it to pay for my way through college. But segueing right off of what Lancelot had mentioned, because I started back in 1991, I was in the first big recessionary period, which we called the S&L crisis. And it was the savings and loan crisis. And it was a similar situation. A lot of bank loans were foreclosed on at the time. And the economy was bad, a lot of unemployment. So interest rates were super high. And long story short, you couldn't give away real estate back at that time. And it was a super high risk proposition because you had a lot of multifamily dwellings in the Bay Area that were sitting vacant and had all these issues. So by the time I had been about 6 years into the business, around 1996, and again, I'm still a college student. Remember, I started at 18 years old. And so by the time 1996 rolls around, I'm barely 22, 23. And I'm a starving college student paying my way through biology to get a biology degree. So what got me started in multifamily and in repositioning assets was taking advantage of the FHA financing for 3% down on up to a 4-unit dwelling. So you could use FHA to buy a house, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. So the big bright idea I came about with was I'm going to buy my first fourplex with 3.5% down. I can negotiate for the seller to pay for closing costs. And then now I have this place I could live in. I have 3 tenants paying my rent. And so I use that model along with 1031 exchanges as my mantra for myself and my clients in repositioning assets. So when a client would come to me back in 1996 and say, hey, I've got 15% I saved up for a down payment on a house, I'd turn that one client into 2 transactions within that given year by advising, hey, you don't own a house. buy a triplex. You could do it with as an owner occupant with 3.5% down, and then you're only going to have to stay there 3 to 6 months. Now you have to stay there for a year, or you need to justify that you're upgrading from your fourplex to something better. So that's what I would tell my clients. They'd buy a fourplex, they'd live in the unit, rent the other 3. Within 3 to 6 months, they'd move out. And with the other money that they saved, I'd put them into a house. So then I was able to do true transactions, and I'd advise them, hey, this fourplex, don't get too attached to it. In 2 to 3 years, I'm going to relist it for you, and I'm going to sell it. Here's what it's going to be worth based upon cap rates, internal rates of return, and cash on cash. And so this was part of the value add that I would advise them. Half the time they're like, what does that all mean? So I'd explain it to them, and I'd say, relax, it's okay. I'll be here for you. And I would do this kind of as a way so that I did not have to keep sending them birthday cards and Christmas cards every year to remind them that I exist. I'd place an entry and exit strategy that I knew that I was one of the only few people that could explain to them that, because they'd go to someone else and go, can you explain an internal rate of return to me, or this? And at the time, most realtors just would be clueless. So it was a way for me to be a value add to the client, show them the value add of the property and how to exchange it into multiple properties. Long story short, within 2 to 3 years, I'd sell their fourplex, exchange them into 8 or maybe 10 units, and just continue this process. I did the same for myself. So long story short, I save up all my real estate commissions, especially after now I have a fourplex that's paying most of the mortgage on my single family. And then I was able to save up my commissions as a real estate agent and then buy 4 more buildings. So by the time I was 25, I ran my own real estate company. I had 5 apartment buildings. My real estate company was comprised of my first 8 real estate agents were actually my past clients that I had, because most of my clients at that time were like in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, right? They're about to retire. So I'm selling them apartment buildings. I'm 1031 exchanging them into different assets. And by the time they've now got cash flow from these buildings, they're giving up their gainful employment. And then they're asking, hey, what now? What about if I get my real estate license and come to work with you? And so I'm this 25-year-old at the time. And I was like, sure. Okay. So that was how BCRE was born. And so I have my first 8 real estate agents, and they're my past clients. They've learned organically on how to 1031 exchange. They know enough about financing, owner-occupied financing, non-owner-occupied financing, how to leverage the two. About that time, in 1998, Clinton had instituted the if you live in your house for 2 years rule that you get a capital gains tax exemption of $250,000 or more. So I'd use this as well as another leveraging point as a value add. Because now remember, I'm telling clients who are coming to me with 10 or 15% down that they saved up for a house, that you could buy an apartment building, a house instead, in that order, fourplex, house, 2 transactions, don't get attached. I'm going to relist that. And so I'm creating this leapfrog effect. But at the same time, I'm saying, hey, now that you're getting this cash flow that I'm setting up for you from these buildings, you know, that house I sold you, list that again with me, because you now have up to a $500,000 capital gains tax exemption, both state and federal. And you and your wife could sell this, and now you've got extra cash you could set aside and additional money that you could go out and buy more apartment buildings from. So again, one business is giving rise to another, because I'm starting out this real estate company with a primary emphasis on generating income and how to use that income to pay for your single family primary residence. But I'm also giving them the steps and the knowledge that, hey, if you want to get that dream home, start out with something that's smaller, that's going to be able to accumulate value. And then when you sell it in 2 to 3 years, you've got this other capital gains tax exemption bucket that you could use to buy a better home and more apartment buildings and repeat the cycle. So for my business as a real estate office, this gave rise to the property management side, because then a lot of my clients, including myself, as we're building up our unit count, we're needing other people to manage our properties. And of course, I start that other vertical that manages my own properties. I have my own accounts receivable and accounts payable department and property managers that are under my broker's license on a separate company. And that's giving value to my clients as well as myself so I could continue to do what I do, which was get out there and sell. And of course, this gave rise to the third business, which was the mortgage side, where I turn around and learn all the different value adds for financing to leverage my clients' down payment or cash to buy as many units as possible, while looking and making sure that they're meeting all the proper denominators for a good income stream, right? Cash on cash, internal rates of return, which provided that entry and exit strategy. And that was the birth of how my various companies came about between 1998 to 2002. And then gave me a great platform to move through different up and down cycles of the real estate market.
And the changes that we've been having, Zillow, etc. You started way before that. You guys, always the old timers always tell me that they were showing listings from a book. Is that?
No, so segueing off what you just said, when I first started, the MLS was a black and white book that was published every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or actually every month, and every 2 weeks they had the supplement to it. And we had this MLS key, which literally looked like a flat sardine can opener that you'd put into a lockbox. And then that later gave rise to these real estate book magazines, which were these color, first black and white, then color publications. So by the time like 1999 came around, I was occupying two to four pages of this real estate book. And I got my face on there going, hey, call me if you want to build your wealth, yada, yada, yada. And I would get some notoriety from that because people would hold on to these magazines. Of course, that gave rise to other things like Realtor.com and Zillow. And then, of course, now I've seen it evolve again because a lot of the advertising is no longer in Realtor.com. It's literally on platforms like we're doing right here, Lancelot, where we're just keeping ourselves relevant and interviewing and expressing our various experiences. And that's how people are finding us. Funny thing, like everyone's heard of SEO, search engine optimization. And now I've heard of this new thing that just came out, which is AIO, artificial intelligence optimization. And the way that we keep relevant to the AIs is we get to know each other just like we're doing over Zoom, which is a hell of a lot more fun than doing like these publications on in the old real estate books, magazines, and or taking ads out on Zillow and Realtor.com.
Sure. You built a reputation for finding opportunities where others only see problems. Walk us through your process. How do you identify performing multifamily assets before anyone else sees the upside?
So back in the late 90s, and I'll contrast that to what we do now, back in the late 90s, the big value adds that I would always bring in was like, don't always go for the A-class properties, right? So in commercial real estate gets categorized into A-class, B-class, and C-class properties. And of course, everybody wants that A-class property, but then they don't realize that they're going to have to put 40% or 50% down and probably get a 4% or 3.5% return on a cap rate, or even a smaller like 4% or 5% cash on cash if they're leveraging it with a down payment and financing it. So that was the first basis that I'd look at it from. The other part is I would always look at if I'm going to be able to purchase this property that has a value add. By the way, for value add means fixer upper or something that's got problems. And of course, you're going to go in there as the operator saying, hey, I believe I've got a better way to operate this to really turn a profit, which is you're really hedging your bets against what you can do, because the last guy who's giving it to you at a good value or a great price, they're doing that because they didn't do well at it, right? For whatever reason, they had issues. So when I'm approaching what looks like a value add, I'm looking at it, how could I turn this around? What's my exit strategy behind it? What am I buying it for now as compared to what the price per square foot would be? What types of income is it generating? And it also depends on the asset, right? Like with a single family house, where people call them fixer-uppers, there is no income stream that's going to come from that. You're buying it with the intention of fixing it up. So you're buying it for a price. You're looking at your cost to turn it around, or your fix-up cost. The sum of those two values is your adjusted cost basis, and you're comparing that against its future value. And you're comparing that future value against the demand that people are going to want to be in that neighborhood. So I would always determine that from the standpoint of, if I'm going to buy a fixer-upper house, who can afford it? And I would just run the simple calculation as a lender. 3% down. What's my monthly payment going to be? Who is my target audience that can afford that monthly payment? It's like a car deal. This much down, this much a month. Who can afford that? And that would determine the true value of what it would be in the future as a fixer-upper. So if you now take that same model or mentality and you apply it to an income-generating asset like a fourplex or an eightplex or a 20plex, and you're looking at that as a turnaround value-add position, a lot of the multifamily will already have tenants in them, right? Very rarely you're going to get a multifamily property that is completely vacant. So when you're looking at a multifamily value add, you're looking at the existing rents, where are they at, as compared to where they should be with market rent. So you're determining your loss to lease. Now, depending, like for example, in California, we have very strict rent control laws. So if you're in a state with those types of things, that's the other thing you have to look at for value add propositions on multifamily, as opposed to like just buying a fixer up or flip house, which is if I buy this multifamily with the existing tenants, are there going to be rental control laws that are going to impede me from being able to increase their rent so that I could then increase the value and make that profit above and beyond what I bought it for and what it cost me to fix it up. And therein lies that entry and exit strategy, right? Because when you're buying a fixer up or multifamily and you're repositioning the asset, what you're really talking about doing is being able to raise those individuals' rents or remove the individuals that are there, right? So in California, where there's strict rent control laws and the owner is now in a position where they have to sell it at a real value to somebody else, the investor has got to look at these tenants that are there. Am I going to have to buy them out, and for how much? So there's very strict laws that have to go into doing that. Now, when I was doing it back in the late 90s and 2000s, the rent control laws that were the most strictest were in San Francisco, and then followed in the city of Berkeley, two big famous cities in California, one for the university, one because everybody knows San Francisco. And then within the outer lying areas were the value adds, right? Because everybody said, hey, this is the place to be. So when I was looking for value adds, I would look for the outer lying cities and then looking at their rent control laws and making sure that I would be able to go in and still raise the rents while not being a scumbag landlord to the tenants that are there, right? Now, sometimes you'd have to determine, are these tenants that are there worth keeping? Because if sometimes you're just going to encounter hostile tenants, and you got to determine, you got to bake that into the equation as well as to what you're going to have to do to remove them through eviction and things of that nature. But once you've gotten all that done and you're fixing up the property and you're comparing it against what the rents should be, then you can project, if these are the rents and these are my expenses, here's my net operating income, what is the moderate or what is a good average capitalization rate that I could impose on my NOI to really project whatever my future value is going to be. And then those within baked into that equation is how I would determine, here's a property that's worth buying so I could fix it, flip it, or not flip it, fix it, refinance it, and then still have that cash flow. And then the beautiful thing in our business, when you own real estate, it'll put off that tax write-off, depreciation, or even the better word, if you're in the business, accelerated depreciation, because all of this kind of offsets the other income streams and lets you keep more of that dollar you've made to go invest in other things.
And all the write-offs, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Because we love those write-offs. As Robert Kiyosaki says, you got to go into debt to make money because debt is a write-off. And you're not using your own money. You're using someone else's money. Interest is a write-off. Let me say it this way. Not debt, but interest is a write-off, especially in our investing world.
Remember, there's always good debt and there's bad debt.
Yes.
So if you're in a position where it's good debt, especially when, and segueing off what you just said, I always point out to people who are afraid of that first jump into getting into good debt. If your tenants are paying the mortgage, or if you're collecting what you should be collecting from your tenants, they are the ones effectively paying the interest, which you're getting the benefit of the write-off for, but they're also paying down that money you borrowed from the principal reduction. So
that's a good debt.
These are all good reasons why, or identifying reasons for a good property to buy versus a bad property to buy.
Correct. Let's talk about syndication. You've helped a lot of investors understand how to raise capital the right way. what do you think new investors misunderstand the most about financing and development?
Ooh, that's a how much time you got here? I was just having this similar conversation with my attorney that does a lot of my syndication or PPMs, right? And so anyone who's doing a syndication, and they're raising capital from individuals, one of the biggest drawbacks that we always have as a syndicator, as that general partner, is when things are going badly for the investment. A lot of times your limited partners are going to be ringing your phone off the hook. And many of the time, it's not necessarily all of your limited partners, but just that small few. And you're still working in their benefit, but you also have to mitigate their expectations. So for anyone out there, that's probably one of the hardest parts is your very own partners internally losing faith or not being able to weather the storm. And so that's a big piece. But segueing off of that, when I first started syndicating capital, it was right about 2004. And at that time, the only thing we could do to syndicate capital was Reg B or Regulation B, which allowed us to only speak to people who we knew or had that less than 6 degrees of separation from. And when we had a certain number of accredited investors we could take on as limited partners, and then non-accredited investors. And we'd have to go meet them face to face. Back then, we didn't really have any other choice, so I didn't really have anything else to compare it to. But we'd go there with our big PPMs and accreditation documents, fill them out, collect a cashier's check, deposit it into the single asset entity's bank account to go do the thing we were going to do, which was whatever it was we were pitching, whether it was a new condominium development or an acquisition of an apartment complex that had a value add. And fast forwarding to today, when you're raising capital, the syndicator or the general partner now has access to so many other tools I didn't have access to. But I've also seen the evolution of and have gained the benefit of, which is like Reg C, Reg D offerings. I have yet to do a Reg A offering, although that's something I'd like to do, but I'm also hesitant knowing when you have that many limited partners that it also becomes a whole chore in dealing with just questions and concerns limited partners have, right? Yeah, but the beautiful thing now is with Reg C and Reg D, you could advertise and gain new clientele on different projects that you wouldn't have had access to. And then now with the power of the internet and things like that, and being able to broadcast your message on platforms like YouTube or wonderful podcasts like this, Lancelot, you gain a lot of that audience, and they're able to connect with you and have very in-depth conversations over Zoom. Again, I was recently speaking at a self-directed IRA presentation. And again, I'd had experience back from 2004 in dealing with some of my clients' money from their self-directed IRA, right? Because remember my earlier part of the story, which was when I first started buying multifamily and then bringing on real estate agents, these first set of real estate agents were my clients that I'd sold multifamily to. And then, of course, we would do cash out refinances from our properties to go buy more properties. And so that was the foundation for where I syndicated my first fund of about 15 million back in 2004. And with that 15 million under Regulation B, I went out and I was the general partner. I stood up for the construction loan debt. And then myself and my partners, we leveraged that 15 million and we built 4 condominium communities, right? A 64 unit, a 20 unit, a 24, and a 14 unit, all within a period of time between 2004 and 2007. And so I got my first taste of not only syndicating capital, being the general partner, understanding personal guarantees and leverage, and then also the power of all these single asset entities that I created to protect my own assets that I was keeping off the table when things went wrong, right? And there's nothing better than and nothing worse than trauma and crisis to really test the value of these entities and the value of these structures that you create, most especially when you're syndicating capital to do these developments, whether it's to build a condominium community or to buy an apartment building, to fix and then reposition or maintain in the portfolio. And so again, a lot of those same lessons that I learned firsthand in the field are things that I would use and segue into what we're doing now. And for a lot of investors or a lot of general partners that I've spoken to, one of the key points I would always kind of pick up on in speaking to some of them when I was helping them through is that a lot of the general partners had not actually had the benefit of owning a multifamily unit themselves. So they never had to deal with a tenant. They may have gotten their knowledge of syndications from their college degree or whatnot, and then they use that platform to then syndicate capital, and then they go out and find real estate opportunities to buy and acquire, but then they'd never really been out in the field and fixing a toilet, doing something like that, or really evicting a person, right? Because all of these things get really baked into the whole big, wonderful spreadsheet equation. So my best advice is not only understanding those aspects and taking advantage of all the different software tools, but also understanding how those little small effects can hinder or could promote somebody's value add proposition that they're raising capital for as a syndicator.
Gotcha. That was a really good explanation of that, because syndication has this like mysticism around it. Like I never went to college, so I never really got to hear these words until later in my life when I started getting into the business and, oh, what is this? What are we doing here? Oh, and I was a part of a few syndications because I was the realtor bringing the deal. And instead of me getting paid a commission, what did I get? A part of the syndication. So basically my commission went into the deal as in, hey, this is my part of the deal. What am I getting for that? I'm getting a 3% or 4% part of the multifamily, basically. So that way I got to build experience within it. I was the boots on the ground guy as well, because the guy that were doing the deal were from other states. And I was here locally, so I was their guy that went over there, made sure everything's done, made sure the contractors are doing their thing. If the contractors didn't show, I did flooring because I have the experience for that. And then when we went to sell a year later, we bought it at 3.5. It was a 42 unit, I think. And a year later, we went on market with it and we sold for 4.85. 1 year. So there's money to be made, just to know how to do it and do it properly. When we bought it originally, we bought it from a mom and pop operator. And we created the systems and the flows, and we approved rents, and we updated units. And that's basically what bumped up the value of the property.
Oh, no, for sure. In fact, earlier when I was saying is that as you're looking at it as an investment opportunity, where the rents are now and where they should be, that margin, that difference between where they're at now and where they should be, that translates into hundreds and thousands of dollars of value add when you go to exit, several million. And
a lot of times it's only just bumping rents. You don't even have to do anything to the units, because the units are like, look, they're not from today, but they're like 10 or 15 years old or 20 years old, and they're still acceptable. They're in pretty good shape, but the owners own it outright, and they never bumped rents because they were okay with what they were making on the property. So you go in and it's like, okay, we fix the systems, we make it more balanced, we put it on in a program that runs email campaigns, et cetera, to the tenants, and then prompts them to pay their rent, et cetera, et cetera. So the systems you put in place. And then you go, okay, we went from $900 a door to $1,250 a door or $1,300 a door, because we're providing systems and solutions for the tenants. And some units get updated, et cetera, et cetera. And now you're like, holy cow, it was valuated at this point because of that lower rent price, but now it's valued at this point because of the higher rent price. And that's incredible. And you can do that with small multifamilies, a ton of them out there that are mom and pop owned. They're just getting sick of it. They don't want to go and fix a toilet. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. And they never really raised rents. And that's why they don't want to do that stuff, because I'm making $700 a month on that unit. Why do I want to have to run over there and fix a toilet or change out a toilet that costs me $200 or $300 to replace? I don't want to do that anymore. And they let go of these units, and you can go in there, give them a solid offer, but according to what the valuation is, you pick up the unit. And then all you really need to do is bump rents, because they fixed a lot of the things in there. They updated some of the units, and all you need to do is just bump rents. And that's the easy way to make money in this aspect of things. The heavier lift is when you need to go in and actually repair the units and put new countertops in and cabinets and bathrooms and floors and stuff like that. But even so, we're talking about a 600-700 square foot unit where renovation budget's 20 grand, and you got a new kitchen in there, you got a new bathroom in there, you got new floors, and you painted the unit. That's all you really needed to do. And now it looks like it's fabulous. You're not putting quartz or granite in there.
And to your point, like I was mentioning, when I was buying a lot of these 4-unit buildings and then utilizing 1031 exchange, I would utilize the 1031 exchange because of the increase of the price, just from simple rental increases that occurred. So like what I did with my first 5 4-unit buildings, those 20 units, when I exchanged them, I sold them in 1030 and exchanged them into a 60 unit, a 38, a 20, an 86, and then an office complex, which I still own, where I run my real estate business and construction and property management company from. And then I had 11 other tenants paying the rent. So when you're looking at it to the point you're describing, just being able to increase those rents, but understanding the rules of engagement to be able to do so. Because sometimes that's the biggest drawback. Sometimes people will buy a multifamily and then they won't look at like the laws that are imposed upon what you can do to raise rents. And they find they can't raise the rents to the degree they wanted to with the existing tenants that are there. Then a lot of operators can get stuck or other problems occur, especially, and I'm speaking primarily to like my own experience in California.
Yeah. That's totally different than Florida.
And Florida, very different. Yeah.
There's no cap here on how much you want to raise. Like you could go from 900 to 1800.
Yeah.
One year to the next.
In the late 90s, when I was getting my start in this, I was in a similar situation. Most cities in California didn't have that. So I got that gradual education of what it was like from one extreme in, say, San Francisco that later got adopted by other cities. We now have a statewide rent control. It's still workable to do that. It's not like impossible to buy as it would be in certain cities like Oakland. But at the same time, that's also given rise to other opportunities like more new ground up construction, where in California, if you're able to do new ground up construction, and you're able to buy out that low income requirement, which it's called inclusionary housing, then you get a 15-year sunset period on that newly built multifamily where you don't have rent control imposed on you. So there's a huge value add to that you could get from building new, and then being able to accelerate the depreciation, get the expense write-offs, get the depreciation write-off, use that to leapfrog into other value adds.
I totally disagree with rent control. I know New York has it, or they want to have it. I think they have it. And then you guys have it over in California. I'm like, that defeats the purpose of a person buying it, renovating it, and then trying to raise rents. In my eyes, I'm like, why would that motivate me to make better areas, to scale up and do nicer jobs and do better things for my tenants when I'm stuck at this anyway, so why would I?
You're absolutely right.
Live in the slum if you want to, because that's what government told me that's what you're worth for the government. Pretty much what they say. You're like, hey, raise rent. So, okay, you're telling me not to put any renovations in, so they have to live in crap.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that, because rent control itself is technically unconstitutional.
Correct.
Yet we adopted in New York. They've adopted. So I've owned properties in New York and in Florida. I was a Florida broker. So in those late 90s, from like 98 to like 2004, and then especially when I'm 1030 and exchanging, I had that privilege of operating in multiple states. So like I bought like 150 units in Maine. I own some properties in New York, some properties in like 350 units in Texas, that kind of stuff. And again, I got to really compare like what are rents like in California versus Texas versus Florida versus New York versus Maine and how certain states had no rent control, how certain states had really crazy rent control, and then the little niche aspects that you'd have to maneuver through to make a buck in those states that had rent control, but at the same time, how it eliminated a lot of your competition just because it was so hard to do. And so when you get in there and you get to know the local county staff and figure out the laws and learn to actually game the system, then therein lies a lot of niche and value add.
Got you. So figure out how the rules work and then play with the rules. And you could get a bigger market open up to you because there's no other players in the field, or there's not a lot of other players in the field because there's only a few that have the backing, like you had attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. Like for myself, I don't have an attorney on payroll or anything like that. I operate with small multifamilies. I don't have a lot of properties. And at this point, for me, it's so much easier not to try to figure out a new state or a new regulation, but to keep going where I am. Although if I grow bigger, and as you said, 60, 300, 400 units, et cetera, then it's different because then you have an in-house attorney. And it's, hey, let's break into that state because there's not a lot of competition there. You figure out the rules, and then we can go and do our thing over there as well. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But that kind of limits it. It's not a monopoly, but to the big players only. You get what I'm saying?
So it was, but not anymore. So speaking of like having in-house attorneys, Honestly, nowadays, and you hear this a lot about artificial intelligence, right? And if you know the right questions to ask, it will give you the answers legally, whereby you can almost not necessarily need an attorney. Like you might need an attorney to file the paperwork and things of that nature. And to your point, yeah, at one time I did have a specific in-house attorney, and I do have certain attorneys that I work with now, but I don't, it's not like it was back then where you'd limit it to the bigger players. Now people do, again, take for granted that they have access to a lot of the nitty gritty rules and stuff just on the internet from being able to ask these questions, but you have to ask the right questions, right?
Correct.
And then more importantly, you have to be able to know, if I get this answer, what do I need to, how do I utilize this or game it? And so, for example, because of all that experience in dealing with like the Great Recession between 2008 and whatnot, and having that benefit of having those attorneys from like the early 2000s, and now comparing it to having a pretty intimate understanding of what certain laws mean, you don't actually need an in-house attorney or somebody on payroll with a big retainer anymore. What you do need are some good attorneys that you could just have ready and available to be able to address specific needs. If you know the right questions to ask on the AI, and then you can correlate certain things, then you can give that attorney enough information to give you the kind of backing that you would normally want to tackle these big transactions. Like I said, when I first started doing syndications and doing Reg B, it was a big mystery. But now there are groups out there that are doing these PPMs for a lot cheaper, and then being able to give your reach a bigger span, or your audience a bigger span. The big takeaway you just got to get from it is, now that a little bit of knowledge could get you into a lot of trouble, is just do the homework to understand the rules you're playing by to really game the system. I liken it a lot to game theory, right? So I don't know if you can see behind me, I have all these like toys and miniatures. I'm talking to you from my home office. So I'm a big Warhammer 40,000 geek.
I wanted to get into that. I've been looking at the figures online. I'm like, what's my wife gonna say about that if I start ordering that stuff?
It's okay. You could. So when I first started playing Warhammer 40,000 in 2004, right? And this is a super expensive hobby. I was always afraid to tell like people like, oh yeah, I like this kind of stuff. And nowadays in fact, my wife would rather watch paint dry. But now it's come full circle, because like guys like Henry Cavill have come out and they're like, oh, I play Warhammer and I play my own miniatures. But the point I was making to that, right, when you play these types of games like chess or Warhammer 40,000 or Infinity, they're very rule based. And so the more I would listen to the rules, and I would be like, this is just like the rules of engagement that I have to play in the real world, when I have to know the law and I have to understand how this law is specifically going to affect an investment that I might be looking at, and how I can use these specific laws to my advantage, whether it's financing or rent control or whatnot, or expediting a development. And so you have fun with it, right? So rather than make it this big, mysterious, complex thing, in my own mind, I put playing Warhammer, because there's like tons of rules. Anybody, if you've ever talked to somebody who plays this game.
Warhammer a little bit in the early 2000s. My friends had the figures and they had the table and everything ready. So I got to play a little bit, but I never got into it because time. And now that I have a little bit of time here and there, now I spend it with my daughter in scouting. So I'm like, okay, painting figurines is off the table for now.
Lancelot, what you do is you get your daughter to this stuff. That way, when she's painting your miniatures and getting into it, and I'm speaking from experience, mind you, then your wife has no choice but to allow you and your daughter, because then she's a bad mom if she doesn't let you play with your daughter with Warhammer figures.
That's awesome. I love that. Hey, that's a golden nugget in itself, guys.
In fact, the funny thing, right? Playing Warhammer, right? Like a lot of people are like, why don't you play golf? That's a better way for you to meet high-end clientele, right? And I've played golf, but I always found it boring. Like I'm into one of two things. I'm into extreme sports like skydiving or American Ninja Warrior, or playing Warhammer, extremely nerdy things. But with all the Warhammer games that I would play, I actually picked up more clients, closed more deals, brought on new partners for other vertical businesses than I would have playing golf.
Because it's not your everyday game. Your average person doesn't really play Warhammer 40,000. It's like I used to play Risk a lot and Heroes of Might and Magic, and I played all these RPG games.
Wait. Did I hear you say you were playing Heroes of Might and Magic, like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff
Yeah,
like
all that
that?
stuff. Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights. Yeah, play them all. Finish them all.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Still love to play Dungeons and Dragons and things like that.
Yeah, these good too. It's just good for your fantasy. It's good to think and work your cogs in there because it's not just something that's put in front of you on the screen and it goes and you're doing things. It's actually fantasy. You have to actually imagine things while you're doing it. And I see a lot of the benefits of that now in my construction career, as in come up with this, come up with that. And I can picture what's going to happen there. My wife is like, hey, can you build a bed for our daughter? Voila. AI, of course, but I had to put the prompts in of what I wanted. And I saw this, imagined it, and I was like, baby, it's going to look like this. This is going to be here, and this one's going to be there. And she's like, I can't see it. Can you just get a drawing together on it? So drawing together on it, then comes the architect. I can't see it in there. That's just lines and numbers. And I'm like, okay, let me figure this out. So scan the paper in, upload it to Chat and say, hey, Chat, this is what I want it to look like. It's for my 6-year-old daughter, blah, 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 blah. And then comes the drawing out of Chat GPT. And I'm like, okay, now we're building it. She's like, I like that. Let's do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's that same neurons you're using to think in that direction or think outside of the box, right? Because people say that all the time. How do you think outside of the box? There's nothing better than going, hey, given the rules I've been given, the components I've been given, how do I accomplish A to Z? And so that goes into a game of Warhammer versus a game of assembling a bed versus figuring out, I'm going to buy this apartment complex and I need to figure out the value adds. What are my hot buttons? Who's my audience on the other side that I'm going to have to sell to or rent to be able to get that value? So it's that same template of thought patterns that go into doing what we do as it is to playing Warhammer. So when you cultivate that other side of the imagination, it's a whole different part of, like a lot of times people will drink, right, to relax after they've had a long day of
different things. Our brains work differently for us. For you, maybe painting a figurine and playing a Warhammer game. I go to the gym. You go to the gym. We do different things for us to relax. Yes, I do put a TV on, but I don't drink. I'll play a series from 8 to 10 and I'm falling asleep at 8:30 because I've been up since morning in the gym, banging out all day, working on these little pet peeve projects for home. And that's how I relax as I build something. It's so much fun. But we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to go to the next question, if that's okay with you. You're known not just for your real estate success, but for your extreme discipline and fitness. How do you balance high-level investing with high-performance lifestyle?
That's a great question. I synchronize all of my devices to my calendar and my lifestyle. I've also been able to have the benefit of establishing and training a lot of employees that I've had with me in the various verticals, right? So a lot of times people will tell you don't micromanage, and that's absolutely true. There is a degree where you have to micromanage, where you're teaching an employee or a consultant or a staff member or a broker associates working for you on how to do their piece. But then a lot of it is being able to understand how to let go and let them do their piece and then bring back their deliverable to you, right? So when I'm going through, I'm very regimented. I specifically know during this time, I'll get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and I'm going to get things ready. When it's really quiet during the day, I will get into the gym. When I first dialed in earlier today, I wasn't sure if we were going to have this meeting or not. I was like, what is this? It's on the calendar. I'll accept it, but it is Black Friday and I'm not sure if someone's working. Who else is as crazy as me to be taking calls on a holiday? But you caught me there at the gym. So I'm working out. And one of the things I'll do is, of course, when I built my gym, I put up my own TV in there with YouTube and whatnot, because then I can, as I'm working out, I'm doing double duty. I'm like listening to very boring legal briefs or things of that nature on video or on audio, and I'm multitasking everything within my life. So while I'm going out and getting and punching out 100 pull-ups or hanging out with several hundred pounds, I'm also listening on legal briefs that are helping me jump into when I go into the office or whatnot. A lot of people today, they have to take advantage of the synchronizing of their various devices. So like a lot of times when I meet new agents, I noticed that they keep their set of contacts on their phone different from their set of contacts in their computer and whatnot. And the first thing I'm always telling people to do is synchronize all these devices. So whatever new updates you make on a single person's contact, it updates on all of your devices. Same thing with your calendar, same thing with your email. And again, why am I saying this? We're asking the question, how do you balance this? A lot of the contacts that we make, right? A lot of times people will say, hey, this is my work contacts, this is my family contacts, this is my Warhammer contacts, where part of balancing all those things is taking into consideration that all those people are a part of the same group or set. Like I said, a lot of the guys that I go out and play Warhammer with, which takes hours to do, later as they got to know me, they ended up buying real estate from me or partnering with me on a project as a limited partner or things like that. And so I'm balancing all those from my workout to my gym life to my family life. Like, we're very religious here in the family, so we go to our Kingdom Hall all the time, and we're constantly doing the things. But we also have to travel, right? I have a wife, a kid. We do things like I go to men's physique shows, or we go to Comic-Con International every year. All of that gets built into my work life, right? I'll meet people while I'm in cosplay, and they're like, hey, that's a great Spartan outfit you're in, right? Oh, great, and we're changing numbers. Next thing you know, I'm connecting with somebody within their sphere of influence, and I'm doing a real estate deal with them. So part of balancing it all is really just leading with for me, it's like just
tying everything in together.
Tying everything in and fitting and seeing how that person within your sphere of contact fits into your workout life, your business life, your gaming life, your family life. And that has been a big piece of how I've been able to do it and balance everything from running a commercial real estate company that also does residential, does development, mortgage company, property management, and then other things of that nature. And then the other piece that a lot of people forget is that, and it's the simplest thing, like you probably grew up with as a kid, going, hey, this person that I know, I'm not just going to sell them a piece of real estate and forget about them. For me, you're going to laugh. As I'd meet people playing Warhammer and I befriended them and we became close, when they went to go buy a house, I'd move them close to my neighborhood so I'd have Warhammer gaming buddies, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
And I would just tell them that, to be really blatant, and they're like, no, I like that. I like you. I like that we could still hang out, we could play. And then, of course, they know a lot about me, and so I would become a trusted advisor in their life. So whether it was somebody looking to invest money in their self-directed IRA and where to place it, and I just give them hints, that individual might fit into multiple boxes within my work life, within my business life, within my gaming life, within my travel life, within my religious life, all those different aspects. So that was how I would continue to do it. And then take advantage of the technology that you have and the different things to really point out those value adds that may not have been as apparent to you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I got to ask, you have an interest in quantum entanglement. For listeners who aren't physicists, what is it in simple layman's terms, and why does that fascinate you?
That's a great question. So when I was putting in that answer into your box, I wasn't sure what to put there. But for the audience that doesn't understand quantum entanglement, so let me try to simplify this. Einstein, back decades ago, came up with a thing called quantum entanglement, and he called it spooky action theory. And what it was breaking down was that particles are never constant. They're in what they call superposition. So like a particle might not be a specific particle until the human being observed it, at which point it could be anything at any given time. And then as they observed this, they started realizing certain particles would interact with each other equally. Like a particle from this point would be in complete synchronization with another particle at this other point. And again, I'm a big sci-fi guy, right? So all this quantum entanglement stuff and also gave rise and foundation for being able to say things like time travel and things like that might work. But at the same time, the big conclusion and takeaway I took from it was, at least for me, when someone's looking at a quantum entanglement and why a particle might be multiple things at multiple times until at one point the human being observes it, was because from our macroscopic view, we're looking at a human being is born and then they die. But in between that period of time, they might have been the jock in high school and then later on turned into something else, or they might have been the nerd in high school, now they've turned into something else. And at various points in that individual's life, from birth to death, there are multiple things all at a given time. It all depends on at what point in that person's life you observe them, whether they're a dad with a business playing Warhammer or on their deathbed, right? So I correlated the two and started realizing, hey, in this really infinitesimally strange topic called quantum entanglement, there are lessons in life to learn. And that's that a human being, just like this particle in quantum entanglement, could be multiple things at multiple times, but they're all the same thing all at the same time, which is what superposition is, right? And so as I'm hitting 50, in my 52 now, and I'm looking back at my life, and I'm looking forward at my various contemporaries' lives who are hitting their 60s and their 70s. And we're having conversations like, man, I remember when you were 25. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember when I was the young guy. Now I'm the old guy. It's that same little epiphany that I had, that we're just a bunch of particles, like in quantum entanglement. As human beings, we're all things at once, while being all things individually. It just depends at which point in time you catch us within our linear timeline from birth to death and what happens in between. So that's why I threw that in there.
That's awesome, man. I don't get to talk about quantum entanglement on this show a lot. That was pretty cool. Before we wrap up, Brian, you've got something big coming. Your new BCRE module series. Tell our listeners what they can expect and how it can level up their investing journey.
Thanks for that. So again, I watch a lot of YouTube, like I said, and I always forget this guy's name, but there's a famous YouTuber, and I forget his name, but
Joe Rogan?
No, not Joe Rogan. He's a workout guru. He owned a personal training gym, and he used the principles of how he leveraged.
I know who you're talking about. I just watched a podcast on him. Oh, and he built like several big multi-billion-dollar companies, correct?
Yeah.
Beard, always. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'll figure it out while you're talking.
Yeah, no, in fact. So for example, as I kind of watch him, and I can't. And
Alex,
if you're listening to this, whoever you are,
Alex Hermosi.
Alex Hermosi. That's good. Yeah, Alex Hermosi. Yeah. So again, as people would talk to me, they go, "You should watch Alex Hermosi." I'm like, "Why? Who's that?" And then I started realizing, wait, I've been watching this guy, Alex Hermosi, and the main takeaway for me from Alex Hermosi was he took various principles in how he ran his personal training gym, and he basically created a codex or set of protocols that you could adopt into multiple businesses, whether you run a construction company or a real estate company, to leverage up your business. And then the big takeaway I had was like, wow, no, I've been doing the same thing for decades now, right? I've been in this business for 34 years, and I've run multiple companies. I've taken those companies and I've learned the tax laws and leveraged them up. So the set of modules that I've been working on is not just focusing on modules on how to become a better real estate broker or sell more deals, but how to tell the story of my own experience of how I started out in real estate, started a real estate company, started these different companies, and the various principles and protocols that I learned in running a successful real estate, mortgage, property management company that I later segued on into other companies like that I'm involved with, that from industrial to producing a movie and things of that nature, right? So, because people have asked, how did you end up doing real estate and finance and then producing a movie that's on Netflix, right? So I have to tell this story. And I'm like, and so the modules that I'm working on are basically the set of principles and protocols that I've adopted in various companies that I still work and operate today, or ones that I've been involved with and then exited, because I saw that same similarity to what Alex Hermosi promotes in his own thing, which is the set of protocols that he would do within his own business. And he leveraged his great YouTube presence and self-help ad that for entrepreneurs like you and I, to how to leverage and 10x their business, right? to quote the famous words of a Grant Cardone, 10x, 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 right? Not a lot of people really understand what that means. They're just like, hey, that sounds great, right? But there's a lot of work in between that. And so as I would take inspiration from an Alex Hermosi or even a Grant Cardone and look at my own experiences, the set of modules I had was just basically to record my own life experiences as they pertain to the various business opportunities, what I had to do to overcome obstacles in those various business opportunities over the last 34 years, because I felt, hey, somebody might benefit from it and use it to get around problems and then get to the other side, especially as we go on. And then it was also a way to give back, take a lot of these experiences where I at the time I was having issues with and then got through them. This is what I did to get through them. And it's just that same set of protocols, like we were talking about Warhammer, right? Understanding what you got, how to use that to win the battle. It's the same exact game theory you would use throughout life that I used in the 90s and the 2000s and then now. And that's what the set of modules are. So it'll help anyone who's running a real estate company to somebody who just got their real estate license. How do I do 100+ transactions a year? Once I've done that, what do I do with it, right? Do I go out and buy a Ferrari, or do I go buy a piece of real estate? And why? Why am I doing these things? And incorporating that along with a fitness lifestyle and things of that nature. So that's what I'm working on.
I can't wait to see that come out. Let me know.
Oh, I will.
Hit me up with that, because I would love to read that. I'm a big fan of reading. It's like a biography in a way with a lot of really useful information. No?
Yeah. Except that now that you have the power of the internet, so it's not just a novel, you'll be able to go, hey, okay, let me take some life lessons from what this guy had to overcome this obstacle and he's still here. And how did he do that without getting a stroke or a heart attack along the way, which happens. A very good friend of mine earlier this year, he passed away of a stroke. He was 3 months younger than me. We're literally having a conversation about the event. We just came from a high net worth function just 2 days before. I'm having a conversation with him on a Friday. And then by Sunday, I get a call from his wife and he's passed. So I was like, wow, life is so short. The way others gain benefit from your life lessons is you document them. Yeah. And
sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
Brian, this was powerful. From value add strategy to mindset to quantum thinking, thank you for dropping real insights today. To everyone listening, if you want to learn more or connect with Brian, check out BCRE online. Follow him on Instagram at Brian Baniqued. It's going to be down in the comment section, and connect with him on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, drop a review, and share this with another investor who needs to hear it. I'm Lancelot Lenard, the Real Estate Roundtable. Where we bring you the people shaping the future of real estate. Until next time, keep learning, keep leveling up, and keep closing deals. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us on Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, where we've unveiled the mysteries of real estate together. Remember, in this kingdom of possibilities, every dream home is just a discussion away. I can help your real estate dreams come true. Just call me at 786-449-7518. Until our next roundtable, may your ventures be prosperous and your homes be filled with love and joy. Farewell, fellow knights of real estate.